computer, I guess. Fantastic. So glad to see everybody. I'm Rosalind Anderson. I'm the chair of the Referee and Laws Committee Referee Development Working Group. And this series was put together thanks to Marquise. He got some of his friends. He's the development person for the Western region and got some of the fabulous personnel at MLR. And tonight, last one in the series, we are really fortunate to have Amelia Luciano. She is a USA Rugby Ref, also a World Rugby Ref, and she is an MLR Assistant Referee and a television match official, a TMO, which is super important for this evening's session, which she will tell us all about. So Amelia, you good to go?
Thanks for the introduction, Ross. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be talking about foul play because I've had some interesting experiences with it in the MLR so far this season, and I know there's going to be some more to come. So if anyone has any questions about the clips that we show or specific instances that you want to ask about, I'm happy to answer those now during the meeting, or if you'd like, you can chase me down and ask me during my very limited free time. So I'm just going to share a PowerPoint and then we'll look at some clips. Okay, so this is going to be directed as if you're an assistant referee, because most of us won't get the lovely opportunity to be a TMO, but there are some facets that are going to be the same or a little bit different depending on which role you're in. So foul play is one of the first and foremost responsibilities of being an assistant referee. And the reason why foul play is so important is because as referees, it's our job to keep players safe, since the game of rugby can be so violent and dangerous. It's also our goal to create a fair environment in which the players can do what they want to within the law. So foul play just doesn't necessarily mean it's just something dangerous. It could be other things. So what does that include? If you look at the foul play law, that also includes things like unfair play, like cynical or deliberate infringements, deliberate knock-ons, slapping the ball out of the scrum half's hands, just things that aren't within the way that the game is supposed to be played, I guess, not in a respectful way. Repeated infringements, so that could be a team or a singular player, that's considered foul play, and obstruction. So any of these things, you as an AR are able to come in and give advice to the referee. So if you've seen foul play as an assistant referee, how are you supposed to communicate that to the referee? So if you see it, you should, if it's more than a penalty, and even if it's not, if you don't have radios, then you should raise your flag horizontally, so in this way, just straight out. And you should only do that if you need the referee to stop the game. So that indicates that you have foul play and it's something large. Don't do that to mark if the backs are back 5 or 10 on scrums and lineouts, because then the referee is going to get an idea that there's something there that they need to worry about. So if you have radios, you can say to the referee, I have foul play against whatever color that is, and then the referee can decide if they want to stop the game. If they decide they're going to stop the game because it's against the attack and they need to, there's no advantage that can be played, then they will do that. And you can actually signal to the referee, stop, stop, stop. We have foul play against white who has the ball. If they can play advantage because they've seen it and they think it's just a penalty only, or they think that there's an opportunity to score, they may just play through it, and you'll want to keep the mark and all of the information to communicate to them once you have a stoppage. So once you've signaled for foul play and you've put your flag out, you can then lower your flag and continue with your duties until play stops. So that includes looking for more foul play, because sometimes there's retaliation. That includes looking for touch, and then any other responsibilities that the referee has given you. So once the referee has stopped play, they'll slow things down and separate the two teams, hopefully. And you can use this time to take a breath and determine what happened, make sure you have the number, the action of that player, and what you're going to recommend if asked. So what the sanction will be, penalty, yellow card, or a red card. So we also want to make sure we remember where the foul play occurred and maybe where the penalty would restart. So for instance, if it happened outside of the field of play, like somebody was tackled into touch and then punched somebody outside the field of play, then the mark would be on the 15-meter line in field. So we want to make sure that we remember that, and then have the correct number of the player. So if you see a player do something, the easiest way to figure out who it was, if you can't immediately see the number, is to identify something specific about that player. So maybe they're wearing neon colored boots, or they have a sleeve on, or they have a taped up finger or something like that. That will help you figure out, or a certain haircut, that'll help you figure out who that person is. And then you can wait until they turn around to see what their number is. And the overarching principle is that the least amount of information you could give to the referee while checking all the boxes of who, what, and where is the best option. So in the foul play process, when the referee asks you what you've seen, you want to speak clearly and simply, sticking to facts, not feelings. So if you felt like somebody maybe did something intentionally, that's not something you want to say. You just want to stick to the facts, like, yes, this person committed a high tackle or similar. We have a question. So if you don't have radios and the referee doesn't see your flag, do you just keep doing your duty until play stops, then let them know, hey, 5 minutes ago, I had foul play? Good point. So the answer is actually yes. So if the play stops with a scrum, a line out, whatever, then you can signal to the referee, yell to the referee that you have had foul play previously. The other thing you can do is you can keep eyes on the other assistant referee across the field. If you see him or her put their flag out, then you will mirror them. So if the referee ever looks to either side of the field to look at their ARs, they'll see that you have the flags out. Obviously, it's much easier if you have radios. So speaking clearly and simply and using facts, for instance, you might say, I have a high tackle against blue 4, or I have a dangerous tip tackle against 13 red. It's important to get the number of that player, because if the referee determines that that foul play has caused, is worthy of a yellow or a red card, we want to make sure we're getting the right player. It's the referee's duty to lead the conversation by asking a series of questions to get a better understanding of what's occurred. And you don't want to offer a sanction until you're asked. You kind of want to draw the picture for the referee. A lot of the times the referee will have seen it from a different angle than you anyway. But if they haven't, then you'll want to give them a clear picture of what happened, and they should be able to deduce from the words that you use what sanction they should be given. If there are two similar incidents, so for instance, there's some minor foul play and a retaliation because of that, then you want to sanction the first offender. This is what we do in the MLR. This isn't necessarily always the process that you're going to want to follow. So for instance, if player A is held off the ball, sorry, I'm in the dark. If player A is held off the ball and player B gets by player B, and then player A tackles player B off the ball as kind of a retaliation, then you would just do a penalty kick against the player's team who was the first offender. If one player starts an incident, but the retaliation is worse, then that's where the penalty is going to be. So if player A tackles player B in the air and he lands on his side, but then player B punches player A in the face for tackling him in the air, then you give a yellow card to the one who did the tackling in the air and a red card to the offender because he punched in the face. And then the penalty would restart with against the red card team. And then if you have a scuffle between two players, so just like some handbags, the players are kind of just grabbing at each other, but nothing that's cardable, and a third person just runs in and does something crazy, then they're going to be the player who's most likely to receive a sanction. It doesn't mean they need to have a sanction, but in general, you want to discourage players from kind of doing that bench clearing, brawling type action. So just a couple of tips for how to determine if an obstruction has happened before we go into some of the more dangerous foul play. So the first question is the potential offender in a position to catch the ball? So in other words, are they in front of the ball carrier? If they are, then they're potentially liable for obstruction. And then the second question is, does the offender initiate contact? So you may see them change their running line. Often they're going to go for the outside shoulder of the defender while their player with the ball runs around the outside. They may grab the defender or try to link arms with them. They'll brace themselves for contact, like kind of prematurely, so it doesn't just seem like it's a random accident. And yeah, they may show other signs that they're trying to create a block. Scott Green asked a question, is there a difference between retaliation and a reaction? That's a great question. Do you have an answer for that, Scott?
Hold on, I have to fix it so you can go ahead. Scott, you want to say?
I was just curious what your thoughts were around that in terms of the previous slide, where if it is an act of foul play, it's quite a natural reaction for a player to go in, and react and protect his player. Is there a difference that we need to think about in terms of what is a reaction and is a retaliation an escalation on a reaction? And is there a difference in your opinion?
I think there can be a difference. I don't think there always is a difference. So if it's something that happens instantaneously and it's kind of a fight or flight response type response, just them trying to protect themselves, then I think that's just a reaction, but a reaction can be bigger than what's warranted maybe. So if, somebody does something annoying to you, you might tackle them, but if you tackle them, hold them on the ground and shove their face into the dirt, then that's retaliation and not necessarily just a reaction. There could also be retaliation that happens later in the match, and we actually see this quite a bit in MLR, and as TMO, it's pretty easy to see the retaliation escalating as the game goes on. So you may have like a hooker and a flanker get into a tiff in the beginning of the match, and then 20 minutes in, you'll see something else happen between these two players or between other players of the same team because they've witnessed something. And that retaliation may build as the match goes on if it's not dealt with. I think Yusuf has a question.
So I like your answer there.
Here we go. Here we go.
Got it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a tough one in a match a couple weeks ago. We had a player take a swing, missed, but the retaliatory swung and connected. So it's like I gave a yellow and then the red because the second guy, he connected face flush. But, like you said, the instigator versus the reactionary.
Yeah, so
it's kind of like a funky situation.
That is a funky situation. If you try to commit foul play, but you don't commit foul play, why did you yellow card him, I guess is the question. Like the guy tried to punch, but he didn't actually connect.
Only because the guy he tried to punch saw it coming.
So he ducked.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
He ducked and reacted. So it was like, wow, okay.
Okay, so
you
our
can't
principle,
punch people in rugby.
Yeah, so our principle in the MLR is if they tried to do it and it didn't happen, then we're not gonna sanction it. However, in community rugby, where if that guy, you know, gets away with swinging at people and causing other teams to get red cards, I think it needs to be dealt with so that it shows that you've seen it, you're in control of the match, and you're protecting player safety, because that's what's paramount. So I think your decision, though maybe not what we would do at the highest levels, is totally fair and makes sense. Good question. I think there's a couple other questions here. How do you manage obstruction with the new law regarding binding on prior to entering / initiating the rock? So if you're allowed to bind on, then the ball should be at the front. And so obstruction isn't occurring if the ball is at the front. I think that's clear. Joseph, write again if you if that's not clear to you.
I think he may be referring to the new latching law.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to pre-latch to the player.
One player can pre-latch to the player.
As one player can, okay.
Yeah, but the ball carrier is in the front and the latcher is behind. So it's only obstruction if the ball carrier is behind another player who's serving as a block for him. Probably an unlikely scenario, but if a player on the bench is the third player to get involved in handbags and throws a punch, what would be the sanction? So you can't sanction someone who's not playing. So my recommendation, which I've had, not necessarily this exact scenario, but things happen similarly locally, would be to ask that player to leave and not continue the match until that player has left the playing enclosure and is gone. And I would get that information about that person from the team, and I would send that disciplinary information to the league or the conference that's in charge of that match. But that's a good one. That has happened several times in matches that I've refereed. Ken Frayne asks, how is retaliation communicated to AR or TMO, or how is potential retaliation communicated to an AR or a TMO? So if you're going to describe the process of this act happened and another player retaliated, you can use just that language. So the player retaliated with a punch, or the player retaliated by holding him on the ground off the ball. And I think that picture gives a different scenario to the referee than if you just say the player was held on the ball, off the ball. If you say it was because of something that instigated it, it can, it's not technically a mitigating factor, but it can serve as a mitigating factor in how the referee processes that. Okay. All right. No more questions, so I'm going to move to the next slide. So I'm just going to go over the head contact process as dictated by World Rugby. There's several steps, and you kind of want to have these in your head. I know Rob Halcombe from the South actually has some mnemonic that he uses to remember the different steps, but whatever you need to do to remember to get all of the information, that's helpful to make the correct decisions. So the first question is, has head contact occurred? So that means, has a player's head been hit by another player's body part? And that includes the neck and the throat. It's not just the head. Obviously, if there's no head contact, then in this protocol, you can play on, assuming that head contact is what you were looking for. If head contact has occurred, the next question is there foul play? So was it not just a rugby collision? that made this happen, or is it because of something that the players did that they could have avoided? And so that includes intentional, reckless, and avoidable acts. If there's not, again, we just play on. Let's see a question. I'm going to get to Jason Bushman's question in a little bit. If there's not foul play, obviously we're still playing on. The next, obviously, if the player's at fault, then the next question is, what's the degree of danger? And so at the MLR level, we're just considering it either high level of danger or not a high level of danger. And if it's kind of like a light incident, you can call it low danger, but generally it's either high, meaning it's red or mitigating to yellow, or it's going to be not red. So that includes the level of control. So if the player has no control over their body and they're just kind of supermaning in, that would be one thing that would make it higher degree of danger. If they're leading with their shoulder or their head, that makes it more dangerous. If it's direct contact to the head, more dangerous. And if it's a high speed collision, that's also more dangerous. So if you have a couple of these different bullet points that we have here, that's probably going to indicate that it's dangerous to you if you can't tell if it's dangerous. One thing that we do when we're a television match official is we look at the point of contact to tell if it's direct or indirect, but then we make sure that we watch the video several times at full speed so we can determine if there's control and how high speed the incident actually is. Okay, so the degree of danger, if it's low, penalty, potentially a yellow card, depending what the incident is. If it's a high degree of danger, it's most likely going to be a red card. The final step of this is asking if there's any mitigation, and a good referee working with their assistant refs will ask this question at the end if the assistant referee hasn't provided it. So that includes not having a clear line of sight, so the defender maybe couldn't see who they were running into or how they were going to run into them. Having it be an upright tackle, so if it's a passive tackle, meaning the tackler is standing there and the ball carrier runs into them, that's passive, so that could be mitigating, versus dynamic, meaning they're kind of more on the offensive. Sudden or significant drop or movement in the ball carrier. So that would mean the ball carrier does like something shifty and then ends up having their head hit, or if they trip or are tackled by someone else at the same moment and they have a sudden drop in height that causes them to get their head hit. And the other mitigating factor, the last one, is a clear attempt to change height. So that means that the tackler is actually bending down at the waist, getting low. Maybe the player they're trying to tackle is really short. And so even though they've gotten as low as they can, it's still going to be a high tackle. So the one really important thing to remember is that you can't mitigate a deliberate act of foul play. So anything that's like really clearly intentional, we're not going to mitigate. So that includes shoulder charges. So if you have a shoulder charge and it ends up being, one of these other situations where maybe there wasn't a line of sight, well, too bad, this player decided to do a shoulder charge, so they're kind of SOL. So if you mitigate, you can only go down one tick. So that means if you're at a yellow card, you can go down to a penalty. If you're at a red card, you can go down to a yellow card. Potentially, it doesn't mean you have to, depending on how bad the incident is. So there's some trigger words that we use. So if there's no foul play, so for instance, if a player gets injured, goes down, and the referee asks, have you seen anything? What's happened? You might just say there's no sanction or no fault. There might have been a sudden and significant drop of the ball carrier, or the tackler had no time to readjust, and it might be a passive action. And the last thing is like if it's involuntary, such as someone pushed them into it, or they tripped, or there was some other accidental contact. And the final thing, if the ball carrier initiates the collision by dropping their head into the tackler's arm. So that's something we see, like if they're just trying to dive across the goal line, they may bend down really low, and then you might get kind of an around the neck tackle. And that's not something that we want to sanction if the tackler has no other choice. So we've got trigger words for low danger and high danger. So again, those are kind of our two brackets. There's not really a medium danger. So if it's low danger, it might be, isn't 100% of the time, indirect contact, low force, low speed, and no leading head, shoulder, forearm. So we don't have like a big hard body part that's ramming into this person's head. If it's high danger, we've got direct contact, no control or very little control, high speed, a leading head, shoulder, elbow, forearm, or potentially a swinging arm. So just to remind you again, there's no mitigation for deliberate foul play, but to explain what mitigation you might be using, you might say there's a sudden drop in height, a sudden change in direction of the ball carrier. The player had attempted to wrap even if they didn't wrap. Tackler was unsighted, and I believe that's it. Okay, so I have some example videos, but they're actually from the law book, so you can all see those on the World Rugby Laws website, and I don't need to go through them with you. I think we'd be better off doing some clips that are relevant that are from the MLR this season. So I'm just gonna stop sharing quickly so I can get the clips pulled up.
And while Amelia's doing that, I promised that I would do this. If you guys could put your LRO in the chat, because we want to see, Texas has been really representing at the meetings. So I promised Timmy, if you could put in your LRO, that would be so great. Cool. Oh, this is great. Thank you, friends.
I'm from NERS, you know that, that's New England. There was another question that I didn't answer before, and now that we've got all of these people.
My bad. Okay.
So Jason asked me a question. You mentioned slapping the ball from the scrum half's hands. What law does this violate? Yep. I remember when I gave a yellow card for it, I had to fill that out. That is deliberate. Don't know. I'm gonna have to, yeah, unfair play. Thanks, Wendy. Great lifeline. Yeah, so there's one line in the law book that's like any unfair play is like not okay. You think I would know that after reading it 1,000 times, but. Okay, so Roz, are you gonna run the poll?
Yes, I am gonna run the poll.
Okay, so we're gonna watch the clips. Some of them will pause partway through, so I'm sorry about that. But you're just gonna click on your phone, what you, or whatever device you're on, sorry. I just assume we're all on the go. What you think the sanction should be. Thanks, Kevin. Law 9.27. Okay, so I'm gonna play the clip. Maybe we should wait a second on the poll.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't share my screen.
So
sorry, guys. All right, can we all see?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Okay. So there's gonna be a tackle here on this white player by, I believe, blue 12. Oh, sorry, it's the player in front of him. So I'm just gonna play that again.
Ready for your poll?
Yep.
So obviously the choices are play on, penalty kick only, yellow card, red card.
Okay, so I'll give you, all right, perfect. So we've got about 75% say play on and 20% say penalty kick. I'm assuming the penalty kick is for a late tackle. And if you deem that's late, that's okay. But with the slow motion, we can see the tackler is already in the movement. That's a different clip.
Do you want me to share the results?
Sorry.
That's okay.
We can see that the tackler is already in the action of tackling as the kicker makes the kick. So it should probably be a play on, but in a testy game, you could call that a penalty kick. Okay.
So that's what I just shared the results. So about 65 of you participated. Don't worry, it's an anonymous poll. So just say what you think.
Also, there's not always, I don't know what I'm clicking on. There's not always a right answer. So sometimes there's more than one right answer.
Good point.
There's a couple things in the chat. I'm gonna let Wendy handle it. Thanks, Wendy. All right, clip 2. This is gonna be a dangerous clean out. So we'll see blue 5 and this other guy cleaning out the green player over the rock. I wish I could hide these. Roz, did you start the poll?
You're going to play it again. So now it's out there. Same thing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Wait. And it's anonymous. So go for it, folks.
Sorry, guys. We're still on the clean out. Okay, so we have about 50% play on and 50% PK. Does someone want to give their opinion on why they would say play on or PK? And we have one yellow card. I'm gonna say this is probably not a yellow card. Cool, let's go with Artie.
I said I would like to play it on because the blue player did not carry the other player beyond the ball. He let him go right where the other defenders were. So the green player did fall back a little further, but he wasn't still moving forward. He stopped.
You sure about that?
From my point of sight, I believe I saw him stop. Yeah, yeah, you're right. A little bit past right here. So he carries him on, and if you slow motion play it, so he keeps going, and this is where he lets go. So it's, yeah, a little bit, I want to say what, 1, 2, 3 steps past the gain line.
So for you, what would your, what is your limit, I guess? Is 3 to 4 steps your limit?
If you would have gone another 2 steps, or if you would have gone down with him, I would have for sure said yes, penalty kick. But the fact that he kind of just blew him off and then let go, I figured it's a nice physical game, and the fact, like I said, that he let go.
Okay, thanks for the opinion. I think we've got Cisco.
Hey. Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think you guys know what I'll say here. So for me, I think it's a penalty, just a penalty. Obviously, we're not going beyond that. You've already seen it a couple of times in the chat. People have said, beyond a meter from the ruck. is then no longer contesting at the ruck. Now you're playing a player beyond the ruck. And one of the things that I think is super important about why this is foul play, it's not just about the action from blue 5 here, but it has to do with then what do the free jacks have to do with one less player in the defensive line, and think about what that action does next and why there's incentive for the blue player to take that player out beyond the ruck, right? That basically collapses the whole defense. Everybody has to shift in, or if not, then there's a clear gap like right at the post. And so that's the thing too to think about with the context of what this action does in the big scheme of things. Because I think it's fair to say it's a good physical game. We don't want to chase anything too silly, but I think take a step back and you really see how this can affect the shape of the game.
So that's a great point, looking at what happens next. And that's kind of like the next level of, yeah, maybe we don't need to call this a penalty every time, as Artie said. And here you can see the 9 is going to get the ball further out. And so it might not affect the defense as much here. And maybe we can get away with not giving a penalty if we want some more continuity in the game. But generally, if it's beyond a meter outside of the ruck area, you don't want to allow this. Especially like this is pretty early in the game. It's only 15 minutes in. So if we can get rid of it early, it's a good idea.
I think Cisco got inside information.
I think he's just...
These are my own words.
Okay. Oh, this one's super long. So we have an injured player on the ground. And the question is, how did he get there? And what happened? Is this just a rugby collision, or is this going to be more than that, something that we want to sanction? So it's going to be this player here. So I'm just going to play that piece again. If you're giving a card, can you tell me what number it is in the chat? I don't think either of these teams are yellow. Great. All right, so we're going to end the poll. We've got one play on, but in general, we're going to go with a penalty kick or a yellow card. I've seen a couple of responses in the chat that are pretty pretty good. So a ruck clean out lifted beyond horizontal and a yellow card for the player landing on the top of their shoulder. And I think that's a pretty clear description of what happened. So yellow card is probably our best bet. But again, if you're one tick off with a penalty kick, that's fine. If you're a red card because you think he landed on his head and neck, then that's probably okay too. Obviously in our games, you only get to see it once if you're not a TMO or if you don't have a big screen replaying it. So that you might end up at one of those places. Oh geez, lots of questions. Did he pull a soccer move and milk it? Probably. Would this be an example of targeting the lower limbs from the law trials? Great question. No, it's not. So you're allowed to lift up the player's legs in the ruck still and drive them backwards. This would be more of a tip tackle scenario although he's not the ball carrier. Going on the lower limbs is more of when the body and all the weight falls down on the lower limbs, where it's going to cause like an ankle break or a knee twist or tendon rupture, something like that. So it's more to protect the joints of the players than to protect the ball, I guess. Roz, can you let me know if I miss?
Yes, definitely. I'm keeping an eye on him.
Questions here. Okay.
And answer. You're good. And Wendy, great job. And Wendy's answering stuff too.
Did it look like 2 red players grabbed a leg and picked him up? Yep, that's pretty much what happened. So because both of them came in at the same time, he ended up completely getting lifted off of his feet, and then he was not placed gently back down, which is why we would go with a yellow card. Who gets the card? It would be number 8, because that's the one that let go last. But if you get the wrong one, which sometimes we do when there's a joint tackle like that, it's the player's fault.
Amelia, I have a question. That situation, so could, very few people said play on, but can you get away with something like that, like playing on at that instance? Or is this the kind of flashpoint we want to make sure that we get rid of, especially in the local levels?
Local levels, I would say 100% do something about it. If it's just a penalty because you decide there's 2 players and they just both drove him back hard and he unfortunately, lands in a compromised position, you don't want to give a card, that's okay. But I think it's important that we do something about it, because if we let this go, then next time somebody's going to lift him up higher and tip him more, and eventually we're going to end up with a bigger incident that's truly dangerous. In the MLR, it might just be a play on. It depends who's refereeing. But I think it's a pretty clear picture that he's lifted, tipped past horizontal, and he lands on his shoulder. So for us, it's a yellow card. Cisco.
I think I might accidentally have my hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, here's another one. So we're going to see as the maul forms, the attack, who's the blue team, are going to have their arm around the neck of a green player. Sorry about that. That one again. And one more time for fun. Pull. Mitigating up, that's funny. It's called aggravating. All right, we're going to end the poll. We've got one person says play on. In general, we're going to go yellow card. We've got a couple PKs and we've got a couple red cards. Can I hear from a PK? Can you raise your hand if you were a penalty kick so we can hear your point of view? Okay, I have 0 takers. Let's do a yellow card.
How about Artie? We got Artie, Andrew Stockton, Jason.
I'll just go ahead and say it then. The fact that he grabbed the player's neck, and it becomes a dangerous action. And the fact that he pulled it down, I kind of try to think mitigating it down to a yellow. It definitely could start as a red, but the fact that he pulled him down should result in a yellow card.
Okay, so you have neck contact and being pulled and moved by the neck, and to you, that's going to be a yellow card.
I'll be brave enough to say that I was one of the penalty kicks.
Okay.
Wavering on a yellow card, but because the Mauls seem to get a lot of high contact and a lot of grabbing and pulling, it kind of looked like it was unintentional at first, but it was very close to getting a yellow card.
Okay. I understand why you would think it's a penalty only. I understand why it could be a yellow card, and I understand why it could be a red card. Does one of the red cards want to share their thoughts?
I have one for the red card.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
The fact that the Maul has already started to drive and continue making its momentum for and the green player that he has his arm around the neck of, they have no longer part of the Maul. He's pried him off and brought him to the ground to force. It's something that is completely unnecessary, because if we watch this, it's in the last few minutes of the match, within the last 10 minutes of the match. This is something that, if it's been an issue all game, should have been something that probably wouldn't need to be addressed. But if this is one like a last moment kind of thing, they are down in points and they are trying to force themselves to win. This is something that the team must have under control prior. This is not something that should be allowed, and is unwelcoming of the sport altogether, in my opinion.
Okay, I can see that as well. I think considering less the timing of when it happens and more just what the incident is, like you said, it's deliberate, it's outside of the Maul. It's not like his neck and his arm ends up there as he's falling. He kind of tackles the guy by his neck, which could be very dangerous. It was lower force, but it could have been something really serious. So I understand why you'd go red. Just so we're clear, the MLR standard is that's a PK or a yellow card, just for information. Okay. So this is going to be dangerous. Head contact. Hopefully you've already seen it. Can we start the poll? Okay, so we've got about a quarter yellow card and 2/3 red card. Can we have a red card and a yellow card offer their viewpoints? Andrew? Oh, I think that's Andre. Sorry.
That's Andre, yeah. Amelia, I thought I was a red card on that one. I thought it was a deliberate action of an elbow to the head of another player. With
Okay.
no mitigating circumstances for me.
Yep, if it's deliberate, there's no mitigating circumstances, right?
Yep.
Can we have a yellow? All right, we have no bravery here. So it should be a red card. We've got clearly forearm to the head. It's dangerous. It doesn't need to happen. So this is a red card and it should be at every level. Oops. Okay, so this is something that we've seen a bit throughout the league, and that's players who are on the receiving team of a kick in general play will try to block the defenders who are coming through. So I'm just going to point you out to what it is, because if you're not used to looking at this, you might not see it. So there's two dark blue here who kind of is blocking this other player. So I'm going to go backwards and then play it again. And then we'll go once in slow-mo. Okay. All right, so we've got a couple play-ons, bunch of PKs, and a bunch of yellow cards, mostly. Can I have play-on and PKs share your point of view? What's that? Ben?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I was part of the PKs because he clearly changed his line, so he went backwards, and to stop the player, so obstruct him. There is no dangerosity in the gesture, so it's not a yellow card for that, but it's definitely a PK. That's my thought.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. Can we have yellow card? Jason?
I could have even gone with the red card, because to me it looks like not only did he change his path, but he deliberately stepped back. And if you look at it almost looks like he raises his elbow. And then a mitigating factor could be that the player in the light blue pretty well gets knocked to the ground, and looks like he's even potentially injured at the very end of the clip. But I gave it a yellow for the out, but even could have maybe gone to a red.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you and from the chat is that we're seeing that the player kind of lifts up his elbow. He's not just standing in the way to create a block for the player receiving the ball, but he's doing more than that. He's deliberately getting in the way, and he's putting out a hard part of his body that looks like it may hurt the player. So honestly, I'm happy with really any outcome that we decide to give. We just need to do something about this. I think if you see that there's direct head contact and the player gets injured, it's okay to give a card for this. And if you don't, it's okay to play on. I think if you don't have any other kind of dangerous stuff happening in the game, sorry, not play on, penalty kick. If you don't have any other dangerous stuff happening in the game, I think then you can play on, but you definitely want to talk to this player and say that you've seen it or that your AR has seen it. So if you are the AR, you want to communicate that into the referee.
Well, and we're getting right at our hour. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let's just do one line out one, and then we'll be done. So that's kind of highlighting what we're looking at, who we're looking at. Sorry, to start from the beginning. All right. All right, 5 seconds. And use it once. And we're done. Okay. So this one, we've got kind of an array of answers. I think I'm just going to give you the answer that we're looking for in with respect to it being 9 o'clock. So I think a penalty kick is probably enough here. It's not really dangerous, but we don't want to encourage them to do it again. We just want to avoid any head and neck contact that we can. If you go yellow card here, it's kind of a soft yellow. I think a red would be overkill. So that will be it for tonight. Thanks everybody for your questions and for the high participation. It actually made it quite fun.
There's a beautiful picture of Amelia that I didn't put at the beginning. Thank you, Amelia, for your time and your expertise. Thanks for sharing that with us. I appreciate everybody who came to this final meeting of our Touch Judge AR series, and we will have the recording, the cloud recording, and we'll make sure that we send that out to everybody. It's also in the referee levels workbook, which I sent out to all the RDOs. So you'll be able to find that on tab 2. We added a development tab, and you can find everything there. So, and you're Dr. Luciano as well, right, Amelia?
Yes.
Do we call you that in the TMO booth as well?
Yep, you can. It's actually Dr. Ref, sir, ma'am.
Dr. Ref, sir, ma'am. I like it. I like it. There are not many of those in the world or the history of. So excellent. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all again at some other presentation, and we'll find out what that's going to be and let everyone know. And thanks for everybody's great comments.
See you guys.
Good night. Good night.